guys, we're going to get into the Q&A portion. Feel free, you're going to raise your hand. Zen, Dr. Travis will call on you. You can direct your question at either of them, specifically both of them, whatever you want to do. So we'll get started with that.
Hi.
Zen, I had a question for you. What was life changing when you decided, oops, I'm gonna change back, or what was your life changing, or if you're willing to share that?
Yeah, for sure. So the kind of aha moment of deciding to detransition really came from an epiphany that I had with my journey in following Christ. And I was following Jesus a long time while I was trans. And at some point, when I was getting ready to really commit and do my baptism, I felt a so unbelievably strong conviction that said, I need to face this before I can do that. And when I went to a revival church, actually, there was a sermon that encouraged speaking in your prayer language and surrendering yourself to God, and it was just a powerful sermon. And in that moment, I did surrender. And for the first time since feeling all of these feelings, my gender dysphoria was gone.
Wow.
How does this affect your family life and how your journey? Like, how did it? How did your family respond to the whole process?
Yeah. So my family responded to my transition and my detransition, I think, in the way any normal, healthy family would, which is just very much in shock at the beginning and trying to encourage me not to do it. But at that point in my time, I wasn't able. Thank you. I wasn't able to actually absorb the words they were telling me, and I was very much in my own head, and I'm very stubborn, and so I was committed to my path. Yeah, the independence there. And so after detransitioning, my family and I had very open, honest conversations with each other, and they did feel a lot of strain and feeling like they were stepping on eggshells and they couldn't understand me. But they say now that, you're your old self again, and I'm so happy that, we could really talk to you and be a part of your life again. Yes?
I have a different question for each of you. For Zen, what do you think would have helped you before your transition, either to hear or to have done?
So something that I feel I would have really appreciated is just a hand extended from maybe someone who already was on their journey with faith, because I was in a bubble that showed any relationship with Jesus as being hateful and you couldn't be a part of it and you must stay away at all costs. And I was very much I was actually the president of a club in my high school called the Gay Straight Alliance. So I was very much in that world. And so just being able to get zapped out of it, maybe seeing what it's actually like and not just hearing what it is, I think that would have been really helpful for me.
And for Travis, what should we do to fight back and kind of reverse what's going on in medicine right now?
The question was, what should we do to fight back and reverse what is going on in medicine right now? I think the first answer is always, to be completely honest with you, always starts at home. And I think the really best thing you can do is support the people in your home, your family, whether it's your parents, your girlfriend, whatever, and then move out from there. And I think if you're in your church, your school, whatever else, those things really need to be first, because you might have somebody like Zen or somebody else, Zen, a few years ago in your circle, and you need to love on them or support them. And that's the most influence that you can have. I think secondly, after that, if you can be involved in either your school or your work, that's a place that you have influence. Because, if you're a Fort Lewis College student, or I'm a doctor, whatever, then other doctors listen to me and other Fort Lewis students listen to you, So TPUSA here, that's a great thing you can do, I think. If you have some other kind of job, whether it's construction or medicine or nursing or whatever, if you can speak up in that area, that's probably where you have the most influence. That would be my answer.
Doctor,
Yeah.
what do the doctors have some kind of criteria before they administer the drugs? Because in my situation, I asked if they had a therapist to examine the situation, and I was told that there was a therapist that approved it. So I was totally out of the picture.
So that's actually my mom. And so her question was, during my transition, she had asked the doctors, well, does she need any therapy? Are there any options? Like, what can we do about this? And the doctor and I had told her at the time that it already had a therapist's signature of approval for recommendation for the hormone therapy. At least currently, you need a gender dysphoria diagnosis from a therapist, which I got through an online therapist who that was not her specialty in about 2 sessions. So at some level, I do appreciate that there is some form of therapy requirement, but I do feel it is extremely lacking in that necessary gatekeeping to prevent situations like this.
From the medical side, I've seen different things. I don't do this myself to kids, as I said, but I've seen different organizations have different roles. Definitely, it seems like the move has been to less. Definitely from parents and patients, I'm hearing things like that. I have another friend, Antoinette, who's a Colorado detransitioner as well, and she has a very similar story, actually, that some of the therapy letters and stuff were not kosher, but they kind of went with it anyway. I can tell you I've seen on the Family Medicine Board Certification re-exam, which family doctors are required to take. That's one of the most common specialties in medicine. That's kind of your first doctor you go to, primary care, general practice. They were asked 2 years ago in their exam, you have a patient comes to you is 13, boy, never met him before, wants to be on puberty blockers. What do you do? And about half the doctors said wait till they're 18 and talk about it and support them until then. But the correct answer, so-called, was that first visit, give them Leuprolide or Lupron, which is a puberty blocker. Wow. And so people often tell you, oh, it's only specialists, it's only at children's hospitals, blah, blah. Actually, a lot of the notes I see aren't even done by doctors. No offense at all to nurse practitioners, but it's often nurse practitioners in these clinics. It's family doctors. In my town, it's a family doctor that does a lot of the hormone prescription, which all I'm just trying to say is it's not subspecialty and it's not as layered protections as they're telling you, and I can point to evidence of that.
How do you have empathy as a doctor for these patients that are going through these therapies that you yourself don't feel personally that it's okay to transition or whatever?
Well, that's a great question. The question is, how do you have empathy for patients as a doctor if you don't agree with the transition medicines that they're doing? That's actually pretty easy for me. Maybe the best answer is like Zen said. I mean, we all have empathy. We all care for these patients. I think there's definitely some people online that are anonymous. They're saying hateful things on both sides. They want me to die, and then other people say bad things about trans people. I mean, that happens. But I think with the actual humans that you meet day to day, we don't hate each other. We all care. The question is, how are we going to have that compassion? The way I said it was, our empathy has to be guided by evidence. I care a lot for these patients. I mean, I'm risking my career in a very real way, my job in a very real way, because I'm trying to protect these patients so they can grow up and make all these choices when they're older. And so I do care for these patients. And as a doctor, generally speaking, we're just used to, oh, here's this person with this religion, this background, this whatever. We're generally compassionate to all of our patients. But in medicine, we're supposed to first do no harm and then follow up with that compassion.
I don't know how to ask my question for sure, but it seems like looking at your stats, you said 90, I think it was 98, over 98% actually move out of gender dysphoria and back to what we call normal. My question is, it seems like as adults, people should be able to do whatever they want. I mean, if you want to be a trans, go for it. And most people won't care. But it's the 18 or so and younger that needs to stop, and that's where I think the focus is, because then you take care of 98% of them for your stats.
Yeah, the American Psychiatric Association, in their Diagnostic and Statistical Manual 5, text revision. It came out 2022. It says that some majority, I believe it's 60 something to 98.8% of men, and it's somewhere between 50 to 88% of women or girls. By the time they're 18, their gender distress goes away on its own by adulthood without any kind of medicine. And they've had these statistics over and over since 1980. So for 42 years, they've known this. And then we're going ahead anyway and intervening. And I am afraid that intervening is going to cause risks and side effects and outcomes, like it did to Zen, that shouldn't have happened. I think adults are different. They are different. I think we still need to have. They still deserve the best health care. They still deserve the best evidence. And I think we need to seriously look at where I was getting my evidence from 10, 15 years ago, the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. It's a very suspect organization. You should definitely Google the WPATH files and read some of the things that they say. It's atrocious. You should read their standards of care that openly cites castration erotica as a very important source of information on caring for eunuchs. I mean, it's pretty amazing. So I definitely still think that's an issue that adults need to address, and they deserve the best care. But for kids, there's no question that it's a totally different ballgame between the developmental and the consent issues, and we need to give them extra protection.
I'd like to kind of add on to that answer that I'm very grateful for people like Dr. Travis that really emphasize protecting minors in that way, because as adults, we are responsible for watching over them in all regards, transgender or not. However, I myself didn't transition until I was an adult. And so I like to also include the focus on all of the people who are adults and still find themselves with gender dysphoria and decide to transition. Because, like for example, with cigarettes, while yes, we can have empathy for people who are stressed and they want to smoke a cigarette, we can also have empathy and explain the education on this gives you cancer and all of the negative health implications that this can lead to. So that's why I feel like it's important to not only focus on minors, but just it as a whole. Oh, sorry.
There's a lot of facets to this. So growing up when, women hit puberty, 11, 12, whatever year that is, did you feel an attraction for the opposite sex up until you wanted to start transitioning?
So this is actually a really great question. He asked me during puberty and when I was younger, did I ever feel any sort of same-sex attraction? And I'd like to say that when I was in 5th grade, coming into 6th grade, I had made a comment to a friend. And I said, women are beautiful. They're just so beautiful. And she said, are you gay? I said, no, just women are beautiful. And she said, well, if you think that, you must be gay. And that kind of, in my 5th grader brain, made me think, well, maybe I am. Maybe I do think women are beautiful, and that makes me gay. And so that kind of led me on a path thinking, I was born this way. This is who I am. This is who I will always be. And I can say for certainty that is no longer the case.
That trumped your hormones, in a sense? I mean, I'm trying to understand. So the hormones didn't do anything for you, or lack of hormones, doctor, that the drive for the opposite sex wasn't enough?
So for me personally, I did not start taking hormones until after I felt that gender dysphoria when I was an adult. I believe what Dr. Travis was talking about regarding the hormones and how that plays into same-sex attraction was that a lot of people that experience same-sex attraction are then put on a path that end up with gender transition and gender dysphoria, when in reality, it was just those same-sex attraction feelings.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying. I'm not saying that giving people hormones makes people gay or straight or trans or anything. All I'm saying is that a lot of the kids historically, especially boys that have gender dysphoria or stress over their gender, it turns out that if you don't give them any medicine, what happens is when they're an adult, most of them, that feeling goes away. And for the boys, historically, most of them, as an adult, would say that they're gay. So I don't want to confuse that with the hormones. I'm just saying that if you were to then give that kid hormones, give that kid puberty blockers, they're going to end up not only as an adult, maybe as a gay adult, but they're also going to potentially grow up as unable to have sex, which is horrible, whether you're straight or gay or anything.
Maybe you could talk about some of the Colorado laws when she was talking about mental health providers. I believe it's Colorado House Bill 1129 that tells a mental health professional has to affirm gender dysphoria by law.
So the question is, what kind of Colorado laws come to bear? And actually, my son was wanting me to point this out when we were preparing for the talk. Another reason that this is so hard and so few doctors talk about this is because we could lose our job potentially. Specifically, if you're a counselor, therapist, or psychiatrist, Colorado House Bill 19-1129, signed by Dr. Polis and Dr. Polis. Please laugh at that. Governor Polis in 2019 basically says that if a counselor, therapist, psychiatrist doesn't affirm the patient's stated gender, so if somebody was a psychiatrist and said to a boy, yeah, you're a boy, or yeah, you're a girl, and it doesn't affirm the gender distress and put them on this kind of one-way train of puberty blockers, hormone surgery, if they don't do that, then your license is at risk. And you guys have to understand, and you may understand this, if a doctor or a therapist lose their license, well, they might have a couple $1,000s a month that they're paying on their med school loans or their student loans, right? And if they don't have their license, they can't work. Okay, if I don't work as a doctor, I guess I'm going to go work at Burger King or something. Like, I don't have a lot of options. And so then I'm going to lose my house, and then, you know, your husband or wife might leave you. I don't know. It's not a good thing. So it's really having a gun to their heads. And there's some other laws which I can't speak about because one of them I'm in a lawsuit against Mr. Weiser over, and there's other laws that kind of push us in that direction. Of note, just as an update, you may know that Childs v. Salazar is a Supreme Court case. I got to be in D.C. during that this January. And there, we expect a decision that the Supreme Court's probably going to overturn at least some part of that law. But expecting that, last week the Colorado legislature put forth a bill that says, fine, we won't take their license, but people can sue them. So Colorado is determined to be like a hermit kingdom, like North Korea. Just, you know, UK will protect kids, Netherlands will protect kids, Denmark, everybody will protect kids, Chile, everybody will protect kids, but not Colorado. You know, that's what they're determined to do.
So I applaud you. I have a daughter close to your age, and even though she doesn't have gender dysphoria, I see some of the commonalities of just the pressure of society and womanhood and sexualization. And my first question is, did you grow up in a two-parent home?
So the question was if I grew up in a two-parent home and regarding the pressures on womanhood today, and I did not. I definitely had not really a strong idea or example of what a healthy relationship, marriage, a woman, a man should be. And I do feel that if I would have had that, things would have been different. There's many times in my life where I had visited friends, family, other people on off occasions, and I was like, people live this way? You can feel okay at home in your own bed? What? Like, it was a very eye-opening experience to see that example, and that's why I say in the presentation that it's so important.
Well, I also want to say my daughter grew up in a two-parent home until she was 14, and she still felt the same exact pressures that you felt. Mm-hmm. So just because you have a two-parent home doesn't necessarily mean women don't feel that pressure. Yeah. And then my other question is, do you feel there was more pressure in high school or when you got to college?
So, that's an interesting question. I feel like the goal for continued education was to give an opportunity to discover yourself and really challenge your own ideas and compare them to other people from other types of the world. I don't feel that's any longer the case. I feel like a lot of public schools and continued educations kind of have this similar mindset of the necessary education that's taught, and we will teach you what to do to follow instructions, not how to think for yourself. And so being in very similar environments, they kind of just slid right into each other. Not much of a difference personally.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting to me because I moved here from Texas, so I've lived in a very conservative area, and I do feel like my daughter moving here and going to Fort Lewis, her entire mindset changed. So,
just to finish that thought, I'd like to say that that you're saying that growing up in a conservative area and then your daughter moving here, her ideas started to change. There is a strong social pressure to conform in the ideology. A lot of the officers and FLC students can testify that this environment becomes very, if you don't agree with us, we hate you. You're a bigot, you're a this, you're a this, you're a this. And unless you change, unless you conform, we don't accept you. And that's very isolating for someone who's growing and developing and wanting to be included. I mean, for anybody. So,
Thank you so much. Well, we're happy to have you here visiting the office for you. It's really good to be a story. What are your plans for the future as far as continuing? Are you going to continue speaking out and trying to help? Or do you have goals to kind of get away from the political side of things? What are your goals?
So as far as my future regarding this and goals that I have planned, I originally did not want to really engage in my story or speak out on it, be videographed. Kind of just wanted to slide under the radar and just exist. It was when I met other people that did hear my story that felt so pulled by it, and them telling me how powerful it could be, not only because of the way I speak, how I convey a message, but just the personal experience that I went through. And that was very motivating to me, and it felt like maybe I am called to do that. Maybe there is a purpose for me here, and maybe I can help somebody. And that's my goal. Whatever way that may look, I'd like to help somebody.
I'm curious, Zen, were you inspired by the stories of others, like perhaps Chloe Cole or other detransitioners who are looking to speak out like that?
So when I was in transition, I often looked up videos from all sorts of the spectrum thinking, maybe let me make sure this is the right decision for me, right? Because I was trying in my best way that I could to make sure that this was the decision for me. And so I ended up coming across a lot of detransitioning videos. And I feel like there was a strong disconnect because in my brain, I said, well, I have no doubt in my mind. This is for sure going to happen. There's no way I could feel these types of ways. You know, I felt very happy to appear as male, to sound male, to live the life as a male. Again, because I had chained womanhood to so much of my trauma. And seeing these people who were happy to be back, but also very distraught at these changes that I was currently very euphoric about, there was a strong disconnect. And so while now I'm on that side as a detransitioner and speaking out, I commend their courage, and I hope that each individual story does something separate. You know, that together we really create a change.
I have a couple questions for both of you guys. First for Zen. How did you navigate the contrasted gender dysphoria desires of your heart and the desire to identify how you wanted to identify and your own personal truth to the truth claims of the Bible that God made you as a woman for a reason? Because you said for a while you lived as a Christian transitioner. Can you kind of share how those two ideas contrasted, and if you like examples of if you doubted your faith and how you got through that kind of stuff?
So as far as my faith, being trans in my faith, and then battling those two conflicting ideas, I would say that I did not grow up Christian, and so I was learning and learning and learning. So as a new Christian, I had very little experience and knowledge of actual scripture. So I was very much getting ideas, little bits here and there, and that was what was framing my perspective. So it took a while for me to even really understand, because there's so many conflicting opinions these days of churches who do support transgender ideology and say everyone is welcome here, and you know, everyone is perfectly crafted in the image of God, and that sounds fantastic to me, so great. And I didn't question it until I ended up reading scripture myself and really finding the people that do stick to word and really challenge those ideas, even though they are socially risky. And in doing so, then I was put in a position where I really did have to confront, well, if I feel so strongly about this, but God is an all-powerful God who can heal, then what do I do? And that was when I really said, I need to go to church. I need to hear the word. I need to read the word. And I ended up at that sermon where I surrendered, got relief from my gender identity, and got baptized that same night.
Oh, let's go. That's awesome. Adding on to that, do you remember any scripture yourself that you read that was really convicting for you? Like, oh, that verse is pretty explicit that calls me out on my sin in gender dysphoria.
Yeah, I think that the beautiful thing about God is that where you are in the moment, he finds a way to get the message that you need to hear. And so each and every time there was a little pool that helped heal a little part of me, changed a little bit of my perspective. But I do think the scripture in Romans that I listed on the board was a very powerful motivator because it switched what I'd always been told, that healing the body will then heal my mind. And once I got that switch, that really turned the gears for me.
That's cool.
Yeah. Oh, were you?
I'm good. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
All right, this is for either one of you. It's really your opinion on how to respond to a certain situation. I have a cousin, and she started transitioning her 12-year-old son. And she kind of put that out on Facebook, you know, as a supportive parent. She wants all the friends and family to know that he's a girl now, and she posted, you know, Christmas morning pink pajama pictures of him, and the whole family and friends were trying to love on her and be supportive, and kind of agreeing and, you know, encouraging her, even though they didn't really agree. You know, like, how can you respond to a situation like that without being mean, but also not being like, yay, go?
I think I'd like to take that first, that when you have someone in your personal life that's transitioning, how can you stick to your own values but lead with love? And I think that specifically with children too, who you're not able to just have a one-on-one per se because there is that parent involved, it's really, you have to connect on that parent and understand that parent in the way that the idea of the transgender ideology, not to say that it's inseparable from politics, but it often is. And the framework there is that if you don't agree, you're a bad person. But if you agree, you're an awesome